welcome back to the Hill Law Group podcast. My name is Meredith Hill, and I am the owner and principal attorney at the Hill Law Group, which is an estate planning law firm in Bethesda, Maryland. And here with me today is our fellow attorney with the group, Ericca Pearson.
Hello.
Today, we are going to talk to you about an important topic of how to talk to your loved ones about estate planning. Because estate planning is such an important topic and it applies to everybody, but it's kind of hard. I shouldn't say kind of, it's hard to speak to our older generation, namely, no offense, older generation, if you're listening, but sometimes it's hard to speak to our loved ones, our parents, our grandparents about the steps that they need to take in order to get their affairs in order. If something were to happen to them while they were still alive, or if they were to pass away. And I think a lot of times they might consider it taboo, or they might be superstitious, but it's really important to have those conversations in place or beforehand, before something happens. So we just want to touch on that topic today, in case of you have a family member that you've been wanting to talk to. Hopefully we can give you some ideas of how to reach out to them. Or if you are that person that has been very resistant to talking to anybody about estate planning, maybe this will open you up a little bit to the idea of having those conversations.
So let me put a personal spin on it. I both of my parents are deceased, and I think we've told some stories about me trying to initiate. Let me give you a book to put together all the estate planning things that we need to do. Your family members will have to endure what you are kind of trying to protect them from. And I guess that is your loss or whatever it is you feel like you don't want to talk about, and you don't want to talk about if I'm not here, what to do with all those things. Your family members are going to have to go through that process if you don't talk about it, whether you talk about it or not. And not having that conversation and then having them to go through that without your input or without, knowing what you would have wanted, or just coming from a place of I was just almost blindsided, really. It made me feel inadequate. I felt inadequate. I was not prepared for some of the decisions that I had to make. I feel guilty about some of the decisions that I made for my mom. It's because we didn't talk about it. And I don't say that you should have these lengthy conversations. You shouldn't be just, talking about it hours and hours on end. But I do think it's important just to say, Mom, have you put together an estate plan? What happens to your stuff if you're not here? And your mom would say, I've never thought about that. What should we think? And just have that conversation. And you can have it in bits and pieces. It does not have to be one conversation. It can be made in bits and pieces until you feel like, let's sit down with an attorney. Let's put these things that we've been talking about in place so that all of these things we can do and we can follow the plan after you pass away. But it's definitely something that I live with. My mom was in hospice and acted like she didn't want the medications that the doctor provided to us. And I was following doctor's orders, felt like I was doing what the doctor wanted, but it was clear that she didn't want us to do what that doctor wanted. And it still is happening every time I talk about it, like the hairs on my arm stand up, because I am living with guilt is the emotion that we're going to put to it. And it's something that I will live for the rest of my life. I will never be able to resolve that issue. And not that everything is so clean, cut and clear, black and white, but it would have been nice if I had a conversation with my mom and she said, if ever this happens, do this, don't ever do this. And it would have given me kind of this point of reference and given me kind of the privilege to carry out her wishes, as opposed to doing something and not knowing whether it was the right or wrong thing to do.
That is important. That is important. But I think what you said about doing it in pieces is important. So I think a lot of times people think that they need to have like this big
come to Jesus moment.
This big family meeting where they have this come to Jesus moment with their parents or their grandparents about tell us what you want to do. Tell us how you want to divide up the assets. Who's going to get the house?
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be over the course of time. You have little small conversations here or there. And you start to write things down and take in not an ask what an inventory of what they're saying.
Yeah.
And then eventually you're like, I think we should really get this officially written down
Mhm.
and talk to someone about this.
Yeah.
Because what you said is correct. If you don't have something in place, like, you're leaving your family to deal with that burden. And we see that on the probate side of things. And it can lead to so much fighting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got into estate planning. I mentioned in our first episode, where I introduced myself, I just thought that I didn't know what estate planning was. That's number one. that's the issue. And then I just thought, like, when people died, people, like, your family fought, and that was it. I just thought that was what happened, but that is not, can happen. But if you have everything written down in black,
That's
and white,
absolutely not what should happen.
that's not what should happen. It should be people following your instructions and carrying out your wishes. So I think that to talk to your loved ones about estate planning, start to do it and just really laid back conversations, like, would you want to be on life support, or what do you want to have happen to the house?
Mhm.
Where do you have life insurance?
Mhm.
Where is your life insurance policy? What about your retirement accounts? Have you updated the beneficiaries? Do you know who the beneficiaries are? Because a lot of times people will nominate beneficiaries back when they start the job, and then 5-10 years later, they forgot who they named. They might still have an ex-spouse on there. That happens, and that's no bueno. So we don't want that. So I think the key is really just to start with these small conversations and be persistent with it.
Mhm.
And if you are that person that has been pushing back on these conversations and not wanting to have it, just think about this as giving a gift to your loved ones, because without this in place, they will be living in a nightmare.
Mhm.
And this is a perfect storm for relationships to dissolve and siblings to never speak to each other again. Seriously,
Mhm.
that can happen. It
Mhm.
can just be over a lamp that
Mhm.
you would never think that had any significance, but it had high emotional value to them. And if you would have just taken the 5 minutes to write down on a piece of paper that you want your lamp to go to XYZ, you could have saved a whole relationship. So it's something to do with, you have to, walk, not walk on eggshells, but just you straddle the line a little bit.
Yeah. And if you get that resistance, I think the thing to do, here's one of the things that I would suggest doing: use my story. Say that, I've heard this woman was telling a story about how she's having to live through the guilt or the, issues with unresolved issues with, after her mom died. And I don't want to be that person. Could you help me to manage that now? I want your input. I want you to tell me how to do these things. I need you to guide me, to assist me through this process. I don't want to have to go through it alone. That may be a tactic. And then the other tactic that I would suggest is that we often do seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you follow us, or if you are, involved in our Instagram, our Facebook, you'll see those nights or those days that we'll have seminars. And what you can say to them is, listen, just pop on this Zoom call and just listen to these women talk about why it's important to put an estate plan together. The only thing you can do is plant the seed, lead the people to the water to drink. And a lot of times when they hear it from a different person or different
Mhm.
perspective, they will listen more than they are lots of times hear it from you.
Mhm.
So that is another
Mhm.
resolution to an issue. If you're feeling like you've talked about it and you're getting some resistance and they just won't budge on talking about, what to do with their assets after you pass away, let somebody else talk to them about
Mhm.
it.
The last thing I want to talk about on this topic is superstition, because that has been a big topic or a big reason of why people don't want to do their estate plan, because they feel that if they write down their will or create a trust, that then they're going to leave our office.
Pinch up and pass
Yeah,
away.
they're going to suddenly go into cardiac arrest and die, or they're going to step out of our building and get hit by a bus. That has never happened.
It has never happened.
Never happened.
Ever.
But like, I get it because I remember when I was doing my estate plan, I did have those thoughts of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking about my death.
Right.
Oh,
You get emotional.
yes, yes. And then like, especially when I was had to do the part for my daughter and like who's going to be her guardian, it was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to think about it.
Yes.
But like, I have to think about it because God forbid anything happens to me or my husband, like my daughter will be alone.
Yep.
And I want to make sure she's in the right hands.
Well, and here's the thing, it's a caring thing to do.
Yeah.
You want your daughter to think, I'm not only thinking about what happens to you while I'm here, I'm thinking about what happens to you when I'm not.
Mhm. Yes.
That's huge.
Yes, it is huge. And again, that's like what people call estate plans, sometimes love letters. So it's kind of like a love letter to her that, we took the time to get our affairs in order and make sure that she's taken care of. And she was a very, she's still young, but she was like teeny tiny when we did it.
But it is a gift.
It is a gift.
So ask for that gift that you give me lots of things during life. We get Christmas gifts, we get birthday gifts.
Yeah.
Estate planning gifts.
Estate planning gifts.
Oh, how about that?
We should start offering gifts.
Maybe. But I think it is just that you've got to look at just try different things on how to approach your loved ones. And you know what? I believe you'll be successful. And hopefully, if necessary, we'd like to hold your loved one's hand throughout that process if you need to, because it's something that we talk about every day. It's, we can get them to start talking about some things without having them think so much about you having to pass away. Just, start feeling like, do you want this person to get this? Do you want that? And they're like, no. Then let's put the things in place to make sure that that's in place. So,
a lot of times after we're done with the process, people are like, I feel so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And
that happens most of the time.
Like, oh, that was so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is easy. We do most of the heavy lifting for you.
Right.
But really, like, you can leave here and just have peace of mind when you're done. So hopefully this episode helped you think of ways to speak to your loved ones. New ideas, or if you're the one that's being a little resistant, maybe that this softened you up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But you can reach out to us via email at info@thehilllawgroup.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook @Hill Law Group. And then finally, you can visit our website, www.thehilllawgroup.com. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.